hommikust! Tere hommikust! Alustame tänast ühistegevuse rahvusvahelist konverentsipäeva. Mina olen Vahur Tõnissoo, tänase päeva juht ja loodan, et kõik, kes te siia kogunenud olete, saate ühe toreda inspiratsiooni tänasest konverentsist. Hakatuseks teeme väikest interaktiivsust. Palun tõstke käed, kes täna tõusid 3 ja 4 vahel. Kes tõusid 4 ja 5 vahel? Tõstke käed. Juba hakkavad esimesed käed tulema. Kes tõusid 5 ja 6 vahel? Palun tõstke käed. Kes tõusid 6 ja 7 vahel? Nüüd tuleb juba rohkem käsi. Ja kes 7 ja 8 vahel? Tublid, kes julgevad tõsta, väga tublid. Ma loodan, et 9 ja 10 vahel kedagi ei olnud enam, sest siis pidi juba siia jõudma. Aga selle käe tõstmise mõte oli selles, et hoolimata sellest, mis ajal me täna hommiku silmad lahti tegime ja kus kohas me üles ärkasime, me oleme kõik jõudnud siia Maaülikooli peahoone aulasse ja see ongi üks hea näide sellest, kuidas koostöö ja ühistegemine on võimalik, kui me kõik jälle koos oleme. Tänase ühistegevuse konverentsi teema on läbi ühistulise tegevuse konkurendist partneriks. Ja ma loodan, et läbi kõikide ettekannete me seda ka siis kuuleme ja saame kaasa mõelda. Konverentsi korraldavad Eesti Maaülikool ja Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoda. Ja konverentsi korraldamist toetab Euroopa Maaelu Arengu Põllumajandusfond. Meil on täna siin konverentsil ka olemas sünkroontõlge inglise keelest eesti keelde ja külalistele ma loodan, et ka siis vastupidi. Nii et kellel on inglise keelest arusaamisega raskusi, siis palun võtke see tõlkemasin ja leidke see kanal üles, mille abil saate tõlget kuulata. Konverentsi avasõnad lausuvad täna Eesti Maaülikooli Majandus- ja Sotsiaalinstituudi professor Rando Värnik ning kes on ühistegevuse pikaajalise programmi eestvedaja ja Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoja juhatuse esimees Roomet Sõrmus. Palun.
Head konverentsist osavõtjad, austatud rektor, head külalised, et ma kõigepealt tänan teid, et olete tulnud meie järjekordsele ühistegevuse teadmussiirde pikaajalise programmi poolt korraldatud konverentsile. Mida me siis korraldame, nagu öeldi, koostöös Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskojaga. Eestis on koostöö ja majanduslik ühistegevus endiselt minu arvates kasutamata võimalus. Eduka ühistu võti seisneb eelkõige ühistu liikmete panuses oma ühistu arengusse ning seda nii rahaliselt kui ka investeerides oma aega ning teadmisi. Võrreldes ühistute teiste kapitaliühingutega seisneb peamine erisus ühistu liikme kui kliendi ja liikme kui omaniku samasuses. See tähendab, et liige on samal ajal nii ühistu poolt pakutavate teenuste kasutaja kui ka oma demokraatlikku kontrolli nii ühistu majanduslike kui ka strateegiliste otsuste üle. Õnnestumine eeldab laiapõhjalist teadmist, koostööd ja ühistegevust. Täna on suurim ühistegevuse vaenlane isekus, kuid sellest lahtilaskmine nõuab muutusi eelkõige iseendas. Selleks vajame enam teadmisi ja kompetentsi oma valikute kujundamisel ja tarkade otsuste tegemiseks. Meie kõigi ühine eesmärk peaks olema kõrgema lisandväärtuse loomine ning oma positsiooni parandamine tarneahelas. Kui vaadelda tulevikku ja maamajanduslikku mudelit laiemalt, väljaspool ka põllumajandust ja toidusektorit, metsandust, võib eeldada, et ühistuline liikumine omandab senisest veelgi olulisemat mõõdet nii majandustegevuse arendamisel kui ka erinevates koostöömudelites. Seega soovin teile meeldivat päeva, loodan, et teie mõnedki küsimused saavad vastused ja tulevikku vaadates oskate esitada vajalikke küsimusi. Head konverentsi! Aitäh!
Väga vabandan. Tere hommikust ka Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoja poolt. Head konverentsist osavõtjad, mul on väga hea meel tervitada teid nii koja poolt kui ka tunda hea meelt selle üle, et me juba Maaülikooliga 2 aastat koostöös seda olulist konverentsi korraldame. Ma loodan, et see konverents kujuneb aastate jooksul kohaks, kus ühistegevuse mõte võib vabalt lennata. Selleks, et siin saalis tekiksid suured ja ambitsioonikad mõtted, püüame Eestisse tuua ühistegevuse edukaid praktikuid erinevatest riikidest. Põllumajanduskoda on Euroopa Põllumajandusühistute katusorganisatsiooni COCEGA liige, mille kaudu kuulume suurepärasesse võrgustikku koos Euroopa kõige silmapaistvamate ühistutega. Aastate jooksul on meie kutse tulla Eestisse rääkima vastu võtnud selliste silmapaistvate ühistute ja ühistuliitude esindajad nagu näiteks Arla, Lantmännen, Valio, Raiffeisen, Pellervo, Aikos, aga ka meie lõunanaabrite ühistud Latraps või Pienas LT. Hiljuti võõrustasime Saksamaa piirkondlike ühistute juhtidest koosnevast delegatsiooni. Siinkohal tänan nii Kevilit kui E-Piima, kes aitasid seda suurepärast päeva korraldada. Ja möödunud aastal oli meie ühistute esimeestel väga hea võimalus külastada Iirimaa, ma usun, üsna muljetavaldavaid piimaühistuid. Täna on mul koja poolt hea meel tervitada siin meie head kolleegi Francisco Porrast, kes on pea miljardi euro suuruse käibega puu- ja köögivilja ühistust Anekoop või ka 130 ühistut ühendavat Iirimaa ühistute liidu Aikos juhti DJ Flanagani. Sorry for the very bad pronunciation. Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoja eesmärgiks on nii horisontaalse kui vertikaalse koostöö arendamine ja mõistagi ka ühistegevuse arendamine. Oleme hiljuti heaks kiitnud oma seisukohad eelseisvateks Riigikogu valimisteks ja kui tuua sealt välja vaid üks mõte ühistegevuse valdkonnast, siis leiame, et ühistegevuse arendamine tuleks seada Eesti strateegiliseks eesmärgiks ja ühistegevuse põhimõtete rakendamine tuleks integreerida erinevatesse poliitikatesse. Ma loodan, et tänane päev annab teadmisi ja inspiratsiooni ühistegevuse arendamiseks Eestis ja soovin teile kõigile väga sisukaid ja huvitavaid ettekandeid ja arutelusid. Aitäh!
Aitäh Randole ja Roometile. Roomet, küsimus sulle, mis on pildil?
Suvel ma sõitsin sealt Imavere kandist mööda, oleks peaaegu avarii teinud suurest soovist seda ilusat ilma ära kasutada ja teha foto ju siis veel valmivast Farm in Production tehasest, kes on ka ju ühtlasi meie liige ja see pilt on vist pandud sellepärast, et see on ju viimase aasta üks ühistegulisi investeeringuid suuremaid Eestisse, et olgu see siis selliseks olukorra peegelduseks tänasest ühistegevuse olukorrast Eestis.
Aitäh, Roomet! Ja sõitsin ise täna hommiku sealt mööda ja kui pikka aega oli Maanteeametiga küsimuseks, et kuidas saada sellele toredale kinnistule sisse sõit, siis täna hommik oli näha, et asfaldikombain on kohal ja õhtuks vast on asfaldi juba maas. Nii et pilt väga ajakohane. Nüüd on tervituseks sõna aga meie Eesti Maaülikooli rektoril Mait Klaassenil. Palun.
Aitäh, lugupeetud konverentsist osavõtjad, külalised. Mul on tõsiselt hea meel päris mitmendat korda seda ühistegevuskonverentsi tervitada Maaülikooli poolt ja suurim tänu on muidugi minu poolt kõigile kaaskorraldajatele, aga teie, kes te kõik täna siin saalis olete just need, keda tegelikult tänada tahaksin ja tahaksin nii palju ainult natukene mängida selle terminiga ühistegevus, et kui siin meie konverentsi juhataja ütles, et Roomet Sõrmus ütles, et need on välja töötanud juba valimiste jaoks oma platvormi, mida siis järgmiselt Riigikogult nõuda, siis tegelikult Riigikogu on ka üks ühistegelik organisatsioon, mis tegelikult hästi ei tööta. Nõnda samuti on ühistegelik organisatsioon ka valitsus igas riigis, mis praegu Eestis parasjagu ka kriigiseb. Aga kõige suurem ühistegelik organisatsioon on tegelikult maakera, kus me peame ja me ka püüame asju kokku leppida. Ja kui me kokku ei lepi, siis tuleb, ütleme pehmelt öeldes jamamajja. Ja kõige väiksem ühistegelik organisatsioon on tegelikult abielu, kus on ainult 2 osapoolt ja kui te nüüd väga tõsiselt järele mõtlete ja statistikale mõtlete, siis pooled abieludest lahutatakse. Nii et see näitab veel kord seda, et ega ühistegelik tegevus, ühistegelikud organisatsioonid ei püsi ilma tööta, ilma vastastikku läbi rääkimata koos ja nad kipuvad lagunema. Et ma sooviksin, et teie, kes te täna siin olete ja olete siin juba mitmeid aastaid käinud, et viiksite siin genereeritud ideed edasi oma kodupaikadesse, et te tutvustaksite seda mõtet, et tegelikult koos tehes saadakse alati parem tulemus ja koos tehes on vahel ka töö lõbusam. Ja ma tahaksin väga loota, et seesama tehas, mida te siin pildi peal praegu endi ees näete, jõudsasti hakkab arenema, sest ma samuti, nagu siin eelkõnelejagi, sõidan sealt pea iga nädal mitu korda mööda ja näen seda arengut. Ja kui võtta nüüd selle tehase areng eeskujuks, siis ühistegevus võiks samamoodi areneda ja ma tahaks väga loota, et inimesed räägivad omavahel ja et lahutusi on võimalikult vähe. Edukat konverentsi teile ja mina lähen tegelema oma ühistegevusega nüüd kohe, sest meil on tulemas Agrofoorumi konverents kevadel ja me valmistame selle päevakava ette ja sinna ootame ka 17-18 maast külalisi. Nii et ma väga vabandan, ma ei lähe mitte uhkuse pärast ära, et ennast liiga uhkeks pidada, vaid sellepärast, et töö ootab. Aitäh!
Täname rektorit ja koja poolt on siis selline tore lõikelaud tänastele esinejatele tänutäheks esinemiste eest. Palun!
Aitäh! See on nii ilus, et selle asja kasutada.
Selle pildi taustaks veel mõned informatsioonid. Põllumehed alustasid selle investeeringuga ja see on silmnähtavalt nüüd sinna kerkinud Imavere risti. Nüüd sellest tehasest maantee poole valmib Tallinn-Tartu maantee kõige suurem teenuskeskus maanteel sõitjatele. Tuleb suurim söögikoht, tuleb bensiinijaam, parkla ja muud vajalikud teenused. Selle terminali taha just on valmis saanud hiigel päikesepark päikeseenergia tootmiseks kuni Imavereni välja. Nii et tõsi on see, põllumehed on esmatootjad, põllumehed alustasid ja kogu piirkond sai arenguhoo sisse. tervituse teevad meile täna Eesti Maaeluministeeriumi kantsler Illar Lemetti ja Eesti Maaeluministeeriumi põllumajandus- ja maaelupoliitika asekantsler Marko Gorban. Palun.
Teeme koos, aga siiski eraldi. Head konverentsi korraldajad, osalejad, ma soovin kõigepealt tunnustada kõiki, kes Eestis põllumajanduslikku ühistegevust edendavad, eeskätt loomulikult põllumehi, aga samuti kõiki teisi. Nagu te kõik teate, on praegu koostamisel põllumajanduse kalanduse valdkonna arengukava aastani 2030 ehk PõKa, ja selle protsessi käigus on oluline selgeks mõelda ka ühistegevuse eesmärgid ja väljakutsed. Oleme sel aastal korraldanud 2 ühistegevuse alast laiapõhjalist arutelu ja viisime ühistute seas läbi ka ühe küsitluse, mille eesmärgiks oli saada just sektoripõhine ülevaade põllumajanduslikust ühistegevusest. Peamised probleemid, mis aruteludel tõstatusid, olid järgmised. Madal investeerimisvõimekus, olemasolevate toetusmeetmete paindumatus, ühistute moodustamine toetuste saamise eesmärgil, aga samuti liiga väikesed ühistud. Tõdeti, et on vajadus konsolideerumise ja ühistute vahelise koostöö järele, on vajadus meetmete järele, mis leevendaksid ühistute omavahendite puudust ja palju muud. Tehti ka mitmeid ettepanekuid, näiteks defineerida ühistegevuse olemus ja leppida kokku ühistegevuse eesmärkides, rajada ühistegevuse kompetentsikeskus, toetada lisandväärtuse loomist ja ühistulist eksporti. Mõnigi nendest küsimustest on riigi lahendada, teistele tuleb vastused leida sektorisisestes aruteludes. Tulles tagasi PõKa juurde, siis arengukavas on sätestatud mitmed ühistegevusega seonduvad mõõdikud. Arengukava elluviimise edukust hakatakse mõõtma näiteks selle alusel, milline on ühistute poolt teenitud müügitulu liikme kohta, milline on ühistutesse koondunud põllumajandustootjate arv ja milline on ühistute poolt loodud lisandväärtuse osakaal kogu põllumajandussektori poolt loodud lisandväärtuses. Need on kõik väga olulised näitajad. PõKa ja selle baasil koostatavad programmid sätestavad riigi ülesanded sektori arendamisel. Põllumajandussektori enda ülesanded PõKas püstitatud eesmärkide saavutamiseks, näiteks kavandatavad tootmismahud või muu selline, pannakse aga kirja arengudokumendis, mille koostamist on asunud vedama Eesti Põllumajandus-Kaubanduskoda ja kindlasti väga suur tunnustus neile ka selle eest. Usun, et see dokument saab kindlasti olema ka kohaks, kus põllumehed räägivad lõpuni selgeks kõik ühistegevuse eesmärgid ja lahendamist ootavad küsimused. Oleme arengukava koostamise käigus proovinud sõnastada mõned põhimõtted, väärtused ja eesmärgid, mida te siin sellel slaidil praegu näete, mille alusel me juba kas tegutseme või mille poole püüelda, mis kehtiksid nii täna kui ka aastakümnete pärast. Ja üheks selliseks eesmärgiks, mille poole püüelda ja mis on ka väärtus omaette, on siis järgmine. Nimelt, et Eesti toidusektor on saanud suureks läbi koostöö ja targalt tegutsemise. Ühistegevus on minu arvates näide nii koostööst kui ka targalt tegutsemisest. Ühistegevust ja just edukat ühistegevust Eestis iseloomustavad juba praegu mitmed objektid, milledest on kujunenud lausa maamärgid. Nendeks on näiteks nii Kevili viljaterminalid kui täna mitu korda mainitud Imaveresse kerkiv tootmiskompleks ja kindlasti kujuneb selliseks maamärgiks ka rajatav, planeeritav ühistuline piimatööstus. Ja kindlasti saab selliseid maamärke olema ka järgmiste finantsperioodide jooksul, sest vähemalt ministeeriumi poolt on meil kindel kavatsus jätkata ühistuliste töötleva tööstuse suurprojektide elluviimise toetamist. Ja loomulikult jätkame ühistegevuse toetamist ka muul moel. Aitäh!
Head konverentsil osalejad, head põllumehed, kui eelkõneleja rääkis sellest, millised on meie ühistegevuse väljakutsed ja eesmärgid, siis mina oma lühikeses ettekandes räägin sellest, milline on meie tänane ühistegevuse hetkeseis, ehk sisuliselt stardiplatvorm, mille pealt me neid samu eesmärke püüdma hakkame. Ja eelkõneleja rääkis ka ühest uuringust, mida me selle aasta alguses koostöös Maaülikooliga läbi viisime ja see uuring paljuski aluseks minu järgnevale ettekandele on. Selle sama uuringu kohaselt Eestis tegutseb hetkel 148 põllumajandusühistut. Laias laastus võib jagada nad 6. Meil on töötlevad ühistud, kes siis oma liikmete toodangut väärindavad, turustavad, on turustusühistud, kes koondavad oma liikmete põllumajandustoodangu ja seda turule viivad, on hankeühistud, kes ühiselt siis sisendeid hangivad, on abiteenuseid pakkuvaid ühistud, nagu ka nimi viitab, kes siis teenuseid pakub oma liikmetele, on tootvad ühistud, mis ütleme vormilt on küll ühistud, aga sisu poolest pigem sellised kas aktsiaseltsi või osaühingu vormis tegutsevad ettevõtted, kes otseselt mingisuguseid teenuseid oma liikmetele ei paku ja lisaks on siis tootvad ühistud, kes pakuvad ka teenuseid, et mõnes mõttes nad tegutsevad sellise sama tootva ühistu vormis, aga pakuvad ka siis lisaks erinevaid teenuseid. Võib-olla parimad näited siin on kas siis põlluharimisteenuste või näiteks kuivatiteenuse näol. Ja nendest 148 ühistust, mis meil täna põllumajandusmaastikul siis tegutseb, ütleme niimoodi, et 3/4 on majanduslikult aktiivsed ja veerand mitteaktiivsed ja kui vaadata nende mitteaktiivsete põllumajandusühistute sisse, siis 20 neist on sellised, kellel majandustegevus puudub, 12 on sellist, kes on kas likvideerimisel või planeerivad selle ühistu likvideerida ja on siis veel mõned, kes hetkel küll majandustegevust ei oma, aga lähiajal ilmselt turustustegevusega plaanivad jätkata. Vaatame nüüd edasi ühistuid nii tüüpide kui ka sektorite lõikes. Siinkohal olgu öeldud, et järgnevad slaidid puhtalt keskenduvalt nendele majanduslikult aktiivsetele ühistutele, keda meil on 113. Ja nagu siit vasakpoolselt jooniselt näha võib, siis hetkel meil on 58 turustusühistut, on 37 tootvat ühistut, kellest 7 siis ka erinevaid abiteenuseid osutavad, on 12 puhtalt abiteenuseid pakkuvat ühistut ja 5 töötlevat ühistut. Et kindlasti on see koht, pean silmas nüüd siis töötlevaid ühistuid, kus arenguhüpe võiks meil selle perioodi ja järgnevate programmiperioodi jooksul toimuda. Ja parempoolsel joonisel on siis toodud ka sektorite lõikes ühistute jaotus. Meil on 58 teraviljaühistut, 28 piimandusühistut, 17 lihaühistut, kellest 7 tegeleb sealihaga, 6 siis veistega ja 4 lammastega ja on lisaks veel 8 puu- ja köögivilja ühistut, kellest 2 on kartuliühistud, 1 marjaühistu. Kui vaadata nüüd natukene seda ühistute arengulugu, siis näeme, et suur osa ühistutest moodustati 90-ndatel, see oli see periood, kus siis ühismajandite reorganiseerimine toimus ja sel perioodil suurem osa ühistutest, kes moodustati, olid just needsamad tootvad ühistud, kus siis ütleme selline ühistegevus võib-olla ei ole see kõige kesksem element. Et kui nüüd edasi vaadata, siis 2000 aastatel ühistuid moodustati arvuliselt küll kõige vähem, aga see on see periood, kus tekkisid mitmed tänased väga suured teada-tuntud ühistud. Ja 2000-ndate teisest poolest ja sealt edasi näeme, et taas on ühistute arv kasvama hakanud. Siin kindlasti oma roll on olnud nii eelmise perioodi kui selle perioodi maaelu arengukaval, kus meil on olnud tootjarühmade loomise meede ja ka muid mitmeid erisusi investeeringumeetmetes ühistutele. Et see on võib-olla selle toetuste positiivne mõju ja selle näide. Ja kui vaadata nüüd 2000-ndest edasi, siis näeme, et siin nende ühistute tüüpide hulgas valdavalt domineerivad meil turustusühistud. Mis puudutab ühistute liikmeid, siis ühistutel kokku on ligikaudu 3300 liiget, kellest umbes veerand tegelikult on mitteaktiivsed ja suurem osa nendest mitteaktiivsetest liikmetest kuulub just tootmisühistutesse. Aga mis puudutab aktiivseid liikmeid, siis kas füüsilisi või juriidilisi isikuid erinevates ühistutes, neid on Eestis üle siis 2500. Kui vaadata nüüd edasi, et kuidas ühistud jagunevad liikmete arvu alusel, siis väga selgelt joonistub välja, et meie ühistud on suhteliselt killustunud, et sisuliselt 2/3 meie ühistutest on kuni 5 liikmega, et kui me võtame teise äärmuse, et enam kui 100 liikmega ühistuid, selliseid meil on ainult 4. Ma arvan, et saalis olijad suurem osa suudavad neid ka ise nimetada, Kevili, Farmin, E-Piim, tõulooma kasvatajate ühistu. Et kindlasti üks väljakutse meil tulevikuks on see, et kuidas me neid ühistuid konsolideerime. Et toetustel kindlasti selle slaidi põhjal on olnud mõningane ka selline negatiivne mõju, et kuna erinevatele toetustele on juurde pääsenud alates 5 liikmega ühistud ja see siin slaidil ka kajastub. Kui vaatame nüüd ühistute lõikes müügitulu, siis see slaid üksnes kinnitab seda eelnevat juttu, et iseenesest meie ühistud on suhteliselt väikesed ja killustunud, et meil on 46 ühistut, kelle müügitulu jääb alla 500 000 euro, et kui me võtame selle järgmise suurusgrupi ka siit veel lisaks kuni 2 miljoni euro suurused müügituluga tulundusühistud, siis tegelikult meil 80% ühistud on selliseid, kelle müügitulu jääb alla 2 miljoni euro. Ja võtame selle skaala teise otsa, kus on siis üle 10 miljoni euro see müügituluga ühistud, siis selliseid meil on üksnes 8. Et iseenesest see märksõna positsiooni parandamine tarneahelas on juba mitmest tervituskõnest läbi käinud, et kui me selles suunas liikuda tahame, siis kindlasti selline ühistute koondumine ja täiendava lisandväärtuse loomine oluline on. Vaatame nüüd neid samu ühistuid suurusgruppide lõikes, aga ka sektoriti, et siin me näeme, et suur osa nendest väiksema müügituluga ühistutest on meil teraviljasektoris, et kui me vaatame seda vasakpoolset gruppi kuni 2 miljoni euro see käibega ühistud, siis näeme, et meil on üle 40 ühistu, kelle käive on alla 2 miljoni euro, mis on siis teraviljasektorist. Ja valdavalt tuleb tõdeda, et suur osa nendest on ka sellised, et kellel on kuni 5 liiget siis. Aga kui me vaatame kõige suuremaid ühistuid, kelle käive on üle 10 miljoni euro, et siin 8 ühistust 6 on siis piimandussektorist. Nüüd müügitulu ühistute tüüpide lõikes siis näeme, et 57% müügitulust annavad meil turustusühistud, 26% töötlevad ühistud, 8% tootvad ühistud, 6% abiteenuseid pakkuvad ühistud ja 3% siis hankeühistu. Et kui me vaatame siia numbrite sisse, siis ühelt poolt küll jah, turustusühistud annavad suurema osa müügitulust, aga samas on ka päris palju selliseid ühistuid, neid on 58. Et kui me võtame siia kõrvale töötlevad ühistud, kes annavad 26% sellest müügitulust, siis samas neid ühistuid endaid on suhteliselt vähe 5, mis veel kord kinnitab seda, et lisandväärtuse kaudu saame ka müügitulu suurendada. Nüüd ühistute müügitulu sektorite lõikes, et traditsiooniliselt piimandus ja teravili meil sellised suuremad sektorid Eesti põllumajanduses on ja traditsiooniliselt ka seal ühistegevus on tugevam, mis ka siit jooniselt välja tuleb, et enam kui pool ühistute müügitulust annavad meil piimaühistud, ligikaudu kolmandiku teraviljaühistud, 8% lihaühistud ja 1% siis puu- ja köögivilja ühistud. Aga siin siis samamoodi numbrite sisse vaadates iseenesest 28 piimaühistut, mida on poole vähem kui teraviljaühistuid, annavad oluliselt suuremas mahus müügitulu. Kui me kogu selle ühistute poolt toodava müügitulu kokku loeme, siis suurusjärk on 230 miljonit eurot, mis on siis meil põllumajandusühistute müügitulu. Ja nagu me näeme, siis 44% ehk 119 miljonit sellest annavad enam kui 100 liikmega ühistud ja selle skaala teine äärmus, kus on siis kuni 5 liikmega ühistuid, mida arvuliselt on kõige rohkem, nemad annavad üksnes 15% ühistute müügitulust. Et seega suurem müügitulu saab eelkõige tulla läbi kas siis suurema koondumise või siis lisandväärtuse, millest juba korduvalt juttu on olnud. Aga vaatame natukene ka maailma tasemele, et siin rektor oma tervitussõnavõtus viitas maakerale kui sellisele ühistegevuse platvormile. Et iseenesest maailma tasemel kokku on 3 miljonit ühistut, see ei ole nüüd ainult põllumajandusühistud, see on üldse kõik tegutsevad ühistud ja ligikaudu 12% maailma rahvastikust erinevatesse ühistutesse kuulub. 300 maailma suurimat ühistut käibe mõttes annavad 2,1 triljonit USA dollarit ja tööd annavad ühistud 280 miljonile inimesele maailmas, mis on siis 10% kõigist hõivatutest. Et põllumajanduse numbrid siia juurde mõningad, et 10 maailma kõige suurema müügituluga põllumajandussektori ühistud on siis 7 riigis pärit ja nende kogukäive on üle 199 miljardi euro. Et siin on need samad 10 suurimat põllumajandussektori ühistut ka toodud, ma usun, et need nimed enamusele teist on ka tuttavad, nendest 10 2 on ka siis Euroopast, Friesland, Campina ja Arla. Et kui neid müügitulu numbreid vaadata, siis meile kindlasti on nad suhteliselt hoomamatud, et 10 miljardit eurot Euroopa suuremate ühistute puhul, et võtame võrdluseks, et kogu meie põllumajandussektori kogutoodangu väärtus eelmisel aastal oli 885 miljonit eurot. Või toome selle numbri, et meil on ühistuid, kelle müügitulu on üle 10 miljoni euro, et on alla 10 Eestis. Et siin kindlasti mõtlemist on, et nende mahtudeni me kindlasti kunagi ei jõua, aga näide sellest, et selle nimel tegutseda on vaja. Moderaator näitab, et aega väga palju jäänud ei ole, et siin mõningad slaidid on veel jäänud, et Euroopas valdavalt ühistegevust tehakse läbi tootjaorganisatsioonide, et siin on toodud tootjaorganisatsioonid erinevates liikmesriikides, kõige enam on neid Prantsusmaal ja on ka 3 riiki, kus ei ole ühtegi tootjaorganisatsiooni täna. Paraku üks nendest on ka Eesti, et ma loodan, et järgnevatel aastatel, kui see konverents toimub, see väike iluviga on juba parandatud. Aga miks just tootjaorganisatsioonide vormis, et tootjaorganisatsioonidele Euroopa Liidu ühises põllumajanduspoliitikas on erinevaid meetmeid ette nähtud ja konkurentsireeglites erinevaid erisusi tehtud. Et mul olid siin veel toodud mõned näited Prantsusmaalt, et kus on kõige rohkem tootjaorganisatsioone loodud, et siit võib näha, et olgu see lihasektor, kus suur osa ühistegevusest või ühistegevuse turuosa on siis kas ühistute või tootjaorganisatsioonide käes, see on see oranž ja sinine osa nendest pirukatest, ja samamoodi piima- ja puu- ja köögiviljasektoris, et kõige ilmekam on võib-olla veel piimanäide, kus üle 90% turuosast on just tootjaorganisatsioonide käes. Plaanisin rääkida ka ühisest põllumajanduspoliitikast, aga ka sellest teemast kindlasti erinevatel konverentsidel palju juttu on olnud ja kindlasti veel tuleb, aga kui vaadata neid väljakutseid, mille ees põllumajandus seisab, teadmised, innovatsioon, toiduga kindlustatus, põlvkondade vahetus, maapiirkondade areng, kliima, keskkond, riskijuhtimine, õiglane sissetulek, siis väga palju neist on just seotud ühistegevusega. Ühistegevus kindlasti on uue perioodi ühise põllumajanduspoliitika üks prioriteetidest, samuti ka meie põllumajanduse ja kalanduse valdkondliku arengukava prioriteetidest. Lähiajal me hakkame välja töötama järgmise perioodi ühise põllumajanduspoliitika strateegiakava, mille kaudu suur osa meie põllumajandussektori rahastamisest tuleb ja kindlasti nende teemadega me selle raames ka tegeleme. Aga lõpetan mõningate selliste sõnadega, mida meie tänase ürituse moderaator alati armastab oma e-mailide lõppu kirjutada, et koos töötamisest koostööni, et ma loodan ka, et me sellest koostööst rääkimisest järjest enam jõuame ka tegeliku koostööni. Aitäh!
Illar, ole hea, tule ka ette, mul on teile mõlemale üks küsimus. Ennem kui lõikelauad saab üle anda. Härra kantsler ütles väga ilusasti täna, et Eesti toidusektor on saanud suureks läbi koostöö ja targalt tegutsemise. Ja hiljuti toimus üks tähtis sündmus Tallinnas Toiduliidu 25. juubel ja seal kohalolijate sõnul mina kuulsin, et Illar Lemetti oli ainukene kõneleja, kes rääkis, et meie toidusektor saab alguse toidu esmatootjatest, põllumeestest. Rohkem sellest keegi seal sõna ei olnud võtnud. Aga Illar, jälle küsimus sulle, et mis on Eesti toit?
Tõesti oli ju ilusti öeldud. Aga mis on Eesti toit? Et Vahur proovib siin nüüd alustada diskussiooni, millel Eestis ei ole algust ega otsa, aga ma ütleks siis kuidagi lühidalt, et Eesti toit peab olema valdavalt toodetud kohalikust toorainest, sest see on see, millele sa sihid.
Suur tänu ja üks hetk veel ja Markole küsimus, et me rääkisime sellest, et meil tuleb uus periood varsti aastast 2021 ja täna on ühistud killustunud, koondumine on oluline, lisandväärtust on vaja rohkem luua läbi ühistute. Millised võiksid olla need meetmed, mis eelnimetatud eesmärke ühistute osas täidaksid järgmisel perioodil? Kas sul on juba mõned ideed?
No, osa meetmeid kindlasti on sellised, millega me sel perioodil juba algust oleme teinud ja millega tuleks jätkata, kas või see ühistegevuse pikaajaline programm, mille raames me seda konverentsi peame. Neid näiteid on kindlasti veel, et kõik võimalikud investeeringud, et kus me järjest rohkem üritame sellist suuremat koondumist esile kutsuda või ka selliseid struktuurseid muudatusi nagu suur projekt piimanduse valdkonnas sel perioodil, et ma usun, et analoogseid asju on vaja teha ka järgmisel perioodil. Üks teema, mis sektor ise on tõstatanud, on ühistegevuse kompetentsikeskus, et kus meie ministeeriumi poolt oleme öelnud, et kui sektor selle algatuse teeb, et siis meie omalt poolt kindlasti oleme valmis kaasa tulema sellega, et võib-olla sellised mõtted.
Suur tänu teile ja tänu täheks selle esinemise ja küsimustele vastamise eest meie lõikelaud koja poolt. Palun! Aitäh! Meie konverents on rahvusvaheline ja see tähendab seda, et meil on täna 4 põhjalikku ettekannet välisesinejatelt. Esimene ettekanne on teemal Põllumajandusühistud Euroopas, peamised väljakutsed ja võimalused. Ja ettekande teeb Jos Bijman, palun. Kui nüüd kellelgi on tõlget vaja, siis on viimane võimalus.
Okay. I can take away my headset. Now it's your turn. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to be here. I would like to thank the Estonian Chamber of Agriculture and Commerce and particularly the Estonian University of Life Sciences, Rando Värnik, for the invitation to talk to you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually my first time in Estonia. So I'm very happy to have received this invitation and to discuss with you a number of issues about cooperatives, not necessarily Estonia. You're the expert on Estonian cooperatives, and I'm supposed to know a few things about cooperatives in Europe, which I think I will share with you. I'm from the Wageningen University and Research, I should say. Our director emphasizes that we should say Wageningen University and Research because we're more than a university. We're actually an organization that, of course, a university does research, but in the past you had a university, agricultural university, which was Wageningen University, and you had the Research Institute, which was under the umbrella of the Ministry of Agriculture. And then quite some time already ago, everything was merged together. So now we have an organization in the center of the Netherlands with about 3,000 people working there, about 12,000 students, just to give you an indication of the size of the Wageningen University and Research. We're located in a country that is probably known for agriculture, or at least people from agriculture in other countries, they know that Wageningen is doing, and the Netherlands is known for certain agriculture activities. But you should also realize that the Netherlands is a very densely populated, it's a very urbanized country. The country is smaller than Estonia, but it has 17 million people. So it's quite densely populated. And as a university, we're also moving into this more urbanized area of issues. Of course, if you're working in the University of Life Sciences, climate change and nature and everything is very important, and that is not limited to rural areas. It's an issue for everybody in the world. So also our university is getting into what we call metropolitan issues, metropolitan topics of research. But that's not what we'll talk about today. So today I want to share with you a number of issues about cooperatives. My background is in management and organization. I have personally in my education, I have a background rather multidisciplinary, both in political science, economics, and organization theory. And I actually think that it is that is a perfect match or a perfect mix to study cooperative, to understand a little bit about politics in cooperatives. Cooperatives have a democratic decision-making structure. To understand the world of economics in which certainly agricultural cooperatives works. And then one of the biggest challenges for agricultural cooperatives and other cooperatives is the internal organization. How do you organize a rather complex democratic decision-making, jointly owned type of organization in the most efficient and most effective way? So that is a challenge you are all familiar with, and that is what we study at our university in our unit on cooperative research. Actually, the research that we do, most of the research is of course done by students, PhD students. They're from all around the world. They study the position and the restructuring of agricultural cooperatives in the value chain. So we look at these organizations always from a value chain perspective. Sometimes a little bit more supply chain management, sometimes internal organization, sometimes more marketing, sometimes it's more pure economics, so, but always from a value chain perspective, always trying to see the bigger picture of linking the farmers with the consumers, or to put it the other way around, linking the consumers with the farmers. So, and then we have research projects in quite a number of countries, and also our PhD students come from many of these different countries. By the way, who of you is actually from a farming background? Just curiosity. Who has grown up on a farm? Please raise your hand. Okay, quite a substantial people. So that's I grew up on a farm, and that well, that still is very handy to know a little bit about what agriculture is about. Of course, you all know a lot about what agriculture is about, but I realized among our students there are fewer and fewer that actually have a farming background, and that is, well, that's the reality. That's, and so we as teachers at the university really have to put a lot of effort in making people understand that this whole agricultural sector is a special sector. It's not like automobiles, it's not now telephones, it's not like computers. It is a special sector, not only because it has this link with the natural environment, but also it's about food. And food is it's a product, it's a good that the farmers and others want to make a living on, but it also is an emotion for consumers. It's something that everybody has an opinion on, and everybody has a taste, and everybody has an idea about how it should be produced and how it should be processed and how it should come to the plate and eventually of the consumer. So it's a special project, a sector, and personally I love to study this sector because, again, you know, it's great to study these things from a multidisciplinary perspective, and that's another issue of Wageningen University. We're very multidisciplinary. We're actually a technical university. I work in a social science department, but I do collaborate with my animal science colleagues, with my plant science colleagues, with my food science colleagues, and with my environmental science colleagues. So we have these 5 different science groups. So all of our research is very multidisciplinary. Well, am I going to say something about cooperatives? That's why you invited me, I guess. Yes, I'm going to just go back a little bit in history about a big project, support for farmers cooperatives, which I was coordinating together with a colleague, Krijn Poppe, from our university a couple of years ago. I would like to say a few things about the theory on cooperatives, opportunities and challenges, hybridization of cooperatives. I think that's particularly from an organizational perspective one of the issues that is really a challenge. Cooperatives becoming more complex, more hybrid, away from the very traditional way of people think about a cooperative. And then finally with some strategic choices and organizations. So this support for farmers cooperatives project, which was a project for the European Commission in 2012 already. There was also a collaborator from Estonia. Unfortunately, I didn't know Rando by that time, otherwise I would certainly have invited him to do the study. Anyway, there were 27 member states at that time, so we had 27 different country studies, and well, actually, there were. In the end, we had 80 different studies. So, if you're not familiar with the project yet, although the data is from 2011, 2012. It was a unique project. It had never been done before and will probably not easily be done again, because it really collected data in all of the member states of the European Union. It had all these country studies. It had, as I said, 34 case studies of different cooperatives or combination of cooperatives or sectors, and it was a great study to collaborate in. It was a great study for us also to organize it, and it's still for many people in agriculture cooperative kind of the baseline of what's going on. For instance, one of the things that came out of the study is the intensity of membership among farmers, which you can here see is that the traditional countries like Finland, the Netherlands, France, their farmers are members of multiple cooperatives. In the Netherlands, we now have about, what do we have left? About 50, 60,000 farmers, and they're all member of at least 2 or 3 cooperatives, either on the supply side, the marketing side, insurance, banking, other financial services. So these are some of the, just to give you an impression about how cooperative the farmers are in different countries. This is a slide I always like to show. Is although it's data from 2010, it really shows which sectors in Europe cooperatives are the most important. Dairy, I would say, of course, but is not always, of course, not always as fully understandable. But the explanation for a high market share of cooperatives in dairy is usually found in what's so-called transaction cost economics. So farmers have invested in assets like land and cows and knowledge and their barn, which they cannot easily use for other purposes. And because of that, that is one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin, there is a processing unit. Milk has to be processed, processed rapidly. So the other side of the coin is that you need a processing facility. In that processing facility, there are scale economies, so you won't have in your neighborhood or in your village or your town, you won't have multiple processing. Usually there's only one. So there is a dependency between the farmer that has invested long-term and the processing unit. And that is, to organize that relationship, it's most efficient to do that in a cooperative. You can do that in just a contractual relationship, but as a farmer you would probably not be very happy because you would be squeezed or exploited on the one side. As a processing unit, processing factory, you would probably also not be happy because how do you know you get your supply of milk? The farmers may go to another, in the end, may go to another buyer. So there is a good theoretical explanation why dairy is very strong in cooperative movement. Fruit and vegetables also has something to do with the perishability of the product. Well, and then there are a number of other sectors in which cooperatives are also quite strong. And this is actually only for marketing cooperatives, so these figures do not apply to supply cooperatives or any other services. It is particularly the sales of the agriculture product. Another slide with some data is on the share of dairy cooperatives. This is actually a little bit more recent, 2016, where you can also see how in many countries the share of cooperatives in the sales of milk is actually very large. And for Estonia, in the red circle, it is 60%, which is actually higher than traditional dairy countries like France. It's close to Belgium and some other countries. So, and then on the right you see some of the more classical dairy countries: Ireland, Denmark, Finland, of course. The Netherlands is quite high in terms of more. 80% of all of the milk in the Netherlands is being sold through cooperatives. And actually what we found also in this support for farmers cooperative project is that the market share of cooperatives is actually going up over the years. Not rapidly, but gradually it's going up, and it will probably even further go up if you include in these slides all the new producer organizations that are being promoted by the European Union. We'll come back to that issue later. Just one last slide with some figures. I put together the biggest dairy companies in the world. And there are a few cooperatives there. Where's my pointer? Does this work? Well, I can. So from Europe, you have Friesland Campina here. This is the 6th largest dairy company in the world. Then you have Alla Foods. And then you have DMK from Germany. And then there's Sodial from France. So some people may be familiar with these slides that actually this is a combination of two sources. One is on the basis of the dairy turnover and the other is the dairy milk intake. So the sources are over there. But the nice thing about combining these two is that you can kind of calculate. Oh, great, thank you. The nice thing about combining these two data sets is that you can calculate what is actually their turnover per kilogram of, or added value per kilogram of milk. And then, well, it's well known in the dairy industry that, that this figure is always higher for the private companies, the non-cooperative companies. So that's why a company like Nestle is that high. But another private one is actually quite low from France. This is really surprising. And Danone and Nestle are always mentioned as, you know, kind of the benchmark for added value in dairy. But actually, if you look at some of the cooperatives, Friesland Campina is not doing is doing quite well. Other Foods a little bit slightly less. DMK, well, DMK is not doing that well. It's more general cooperative, and then very interestingly, the French cooperative Sodial is actually has a very high, certainly for cooperatives, a very high added value per kilogram of milk, and that is because they put so much milk into high value products like the Joplet yogurts is a well-known brand of Sodial. So they're doing quite well there. All right, so far for some data on cooperatives in Europe and certainly for the dairy. I know dairy is also very important in Estonia, so I put a little bit more emphasis on the dairy in my presentation. In order to understand what's going on among cooperatives, not only dairy cooperatives but other cooperatives as well, I always start with a definition of cooperatives. People may have different ideas about cooperatives, and I know, as I started out saying, that cooperative is a complex organization. So you need to be clear. That's common in academia. You need to be clear what we are talking about. There are actually two types of definitions. One is the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance definition, which is a very well-established traditional cooperative definition. It's an association of persons for the economic and social and cultural needs and a jointly owned enterprise. So that already gives some, from an organizational perspective, already some interesting challenge. It's an association and it's an enterprise. And it's jointly owned and democratically controlled. And then here it says persons are the members, but in most countries also businesses can be members. So there is that is a more, I would say, a more traditional definition of cooperatives. Actually, in our research, certainly a more economic-oriented research, we usually define a cooperative more narrow, and then we use the definition by John Dunn from the United States. We say a cooperative is an economic organization characterized by a threefold relationship between members and the cooperative business. There is a transactional relationship. Let's take the example of the dairy cooperative. Farmers deliver their milk and want to get a high price, therefore. That is a transactional relationship. That is the main reason to be a member of the cooperative, to get a good price for the products that is delivered. But in order to make that cooperative work well, the cooperative needs money, working capital, so there's a financial relationship there, there's an ownership, and then there is a decision-making relationship. That is the democratic decision-making. So these three elements are a combination, are a kind of a system. And you cannot just change one or the other, then the system may fall apart. So they are very much connected. And the challenge of cooperatives nowadays is that there are changes going on in either one of them or all of them, and how to still combine them in an efficient and effective way. That is the biggest challenge for current cooperatives in agriculture. And we'll come back to that. So, well, I may skip a few slides given time. So the traditional theories on cooperatives are usually about bargaining power, economies of scale. I gave the example of transaction cost economics, but there is also a more sociological perspective on cooperatives, collective action, institutionalization theory, and a more managerial perspective on cooperative, which says that cooperatives, they have a function, or they function in the value chain by constantly developing and constantly adapting to a dynamic environment. And the very nice examples of cooperatives that have been able to do that. Of course, there are examples of cooperatives that have not been able to do that, but I'm convinced that cooperatives in basics are able to develop and to adapt to the challenges in their environment. These challenges are changing over time. In the past, it was all about bargaining power. It was all about economies of scale. But nowadays, the emphasis in what cooperatives are doing is much more on the latter, let's say 4, 5, and 6. So from this value chain perspective, the emphasis of what a cooperative is doing and should be doing well is much more on reducing transaction cost, on improving supply chain efficiency, and in collaboratively producing new products. And it's not just innovation, it's co-innovation. We call it co-innovation because most of the innovations, they require explicit collaboration from other actors in the value chain. So it's very often the combination of the farmer, the processors, and sometimes even the retailer that leads to new innovative products. Sometimes in the case of a dairy product, sometimes the innovation or new product development is just at the level of the processing company. But if it's, for instance, about organic farming, then it's the farmer that is doing something new, and the processing company has to keep that milk separate, and the retail company has to probably have to have a separate marketing program for these organic products. And that is only just the starting. I mean, we're going to see many more of these different milk streams and different dairy products where it is not just a new dessert or not just a new yogurt, but it's a new product that is the result of a co-innovation of all of the actors in the value chain. So this is an example of the vertical coordination that was said already this morning. From a study that we did in the Netherlands, what are actually the factors that are supporting farmer cooperation? And this is something that, well, of course, if you look at it from a more sociological perspective, then you cannot just implant cooperatives, or you cannot just implant cooperatives in any society. I do a lot of research in developing countries, in Asia, in Africa, and what we see is that from a governmental point of view, there is always a lot of emphasis on promoting cooperatives, on promoting the collaboration among farmers, but there are all kinds of social and institutional barriers, and these social institutional barriers actually have to be solved as well in order to get a good collaboration. So these are a number of factors that came out of our study on what factors actually support farmer cooperation. Previous experience is always important. High trust in society. If we look at high trust, then, for instance, from our support for farmer cooperatives project, we developed this this scheme, where on the left side you have the membership intensity. So how so that is related to the figure I showed before, the map of Europe. How intensive is the membership of a farmer in different cooperatives? And you can draw more or less a line. Actually, you can draw more or less a line from. Hello? Am I on? Okay. From left side low to up there, and Finland. Well, you're all familiar with Finland. Is considered the most cooperative country in Europe, or maybe even in the world. The Netherlands is also quite high. So in terms of combination of membership intensity there and the trust in political institutions, so this is more general trust. It's not whether you trust your neighbor, but it's trust in society in general, in the institutions. We sometimes call that structural trust. And well, there is a line basically going from left below to right here, and Estonia is here. It's quite high on the trust continuum, but farmers are not very intensely members of the cooperative. So this was 10 years ago, I think, almost measured. So maybe it's different now, but it's well, you know better than I do. But it's interesting that. There is a relationship between general trust and the level of cooperativeness in a country. Well, moving a little bit quicker, actually. So what's going on actually broadly in the agri-food sector that are some opportunities and some challenges for the agri-food cooperatives? And I make a distinction between what's happening in the market environment and what's happening in the policy environment. And in the policy environment, we see at least 3 developments that would probably be supportive of cooperative. The first one is the legislation, European legislation on producer organizations. And I think I have a slide about that. Yeah, I have a slide. The producer organization legislation in Europe started in the 1990s for the fruit and vegetable industry. And there were quite some substantial subsidies available for these newly established producer organizations. And they were promoted by the European Union because the European Union wanted these farmers, not individually, but collectively, to do first a better marketing of their products. Also from a consumer health perspective, people have to eat more fruits and vegetables. And secondly, the other objective was to strengthen the sustainability of the sector. The sector in the 80s and the 90s was still using a lot of chemicals, agrochemicals, too much. This regulation was also meant to strengthen the sustainability of fruit and vegetable farming. And I think that's knowing what changed over the last 20 years in fruit and vegetables in the Netherlands, but also in other countries. Spain is a very nice example of where we've seen major changes on the way of sustainability. I think this legislation has been quite successful. Since 2013, POs, producer organizations, also promoted in dairy sector. There are no subsidies there, but it's particularly meant to allow bargaining among farmers for a better delivery condition, better price, or more clear quality measurement, quality standards. And since this year, it's been expanded, this legislation, to all agricultural sectors, and the EU is even thinking about providing subsidies for POs in other sectors. There are, of course, some subsidies already, but that is more from the rural development policies. And then the question is, of course, what does it mean, these producer organizations, for existing cooperatives? For instance, there are a number of countries that are not very very strongly promoting this. For instance, in the Netherlands, producer organizations are not promoted by, in dairy, sorry, I should emphasize dairy, are not promoted by the national authorities because we have a high market share of cooperatives already. So this was also particularly meant for those countries, those European member states where there was a very low level of collaboration or cooperation among farmers. So, but I definitely expect more emphasis on these type of producer organizations, and they're very much related or very much similar to cooperatives, but the main difference is that a cooperative is a certain legal form. A producer organization can be almost any type of legal forms. So it does not necessarily have to be a cooperative. It's up to the national authorities to say whether a producer organization should be a cooperative or not. So there is a little bit of a tension there in terms of whether all producer organizations should be cooperatives. In some countries, the national authorities have said, yes, they should be cooperatives. In other countries, they say, could be any legal form. Could be just a limited liability company or a GmbH in Germany, or even a public limited company. Can be anything, or a partnership. Sorry. So that is one, but definitely the positive thing is that there is quite from the authorities, the policymakers, there's quite some attention, positive attention for promoting farmer collaboration. Then there is, of course, the importance of strengthening ecosystem services, nature conservation, things like that. No farmer can do that alone. There's always collective action needed. So that is also where there's by the nature of its activities, there is a promotion of collaboration among farmers. And then more generally, rural development, also in the rural development policies of the European Union, there is increasing attention for collaboration among farmers. Again, not necessarily in a cooperative, could also be an association or another type, but certainly there is a positive attitude there. From a market perspective, there are also some clear opportunities for agri-food cooperatives. There are some market trends like the short supply chains, the local production that could also encourage farmers to set up, in this case, new cooperatives, new organizations to service these consumer demands. The cooperative has become a more legitimate business model. 20 years ago, nobody talks about cooperatives. Actually, I always, some 15 years ago, when I started lecturing at the university, I had a lecture on different legal forms of organizations, and then I had invited a notary to give some, from their perspective, to tell a little bit about the different legal forms that entrepreneurs could take if they wanted to set up a business. And he mentioned all the different legal forms, and their partnerships and foundations and public companies and limited companies and whatever. They're more or less the same. The names are different in every country, but the type of organizations are more or less the same in every country. But he didn't mention cooperative. So I was really surprised, coming from a dairy farming background. My father was in the board of a dairy cooperative, so cooperatives for me were natural things. So, but this notary was not, this legal advisor was not cooperative. So I asked him, why not cooperative? No, mister, cooperatives are something of the past. Nobody talks about cooperatives anymore. Nobody's going to set up a cooperative. So I'm very happy that has changed, because I personally think that cooperative is a very good business model, and it has become a more legitimate, more accepted, or even a preferred business model, certainly after the financial crisis of 10 years ago. Cooperative people realized, no, this is something else than the capitalist or the investor-owned or just money-making type of business models. Okay, I skip my, well, no, I don't skip that. Just one example of a very nice cooperative that has been very resilient, has been able to change, has been able to change to the dynamic environment. It's a small dairy cooperative. It's called Kono Cheesemakers in the Netherlands. If I have a picture of the Netherlands here, it's in the west part of the Netherlands. It also happens to be the part of the Netherlands where I grew up. It's known for its cows, for its windmills and its tulips. So in that sense, I'm a very classical Dutch boy. But anyway, this cooperative is a small one. It used to, until some 15 years ago, it used to produce just bulk cheese, just commodities. And then it decided to change into more added value. And it developed its own brand, Beemster. Beemster is actually, which is a small region here, which is a region, which is, it now has this UNESCO, United Nations, what is it, heritage standard, because it's one of the old, what we call polders in the Netherlands. It's the old land reclamation. So it used to be a lake until the early 17th century, and it was one of those lakes that were, actually that's where the windmills, where is my pointer that, oh, sorry. Actually, that's where the windmills come from. They had to take the water out of these lakes, and then it was dried, and that's where, and it turned out to be very healthy, or sorry, very fertile soil. So it's a particular area with a rich history, and they're exploiting that history in terms of their marketing. So they have called it Beemster cheese, have been very successful in building this brand. They're also the main supplier of the Ben & Jerry ice cream of Unilever. And a Ben & Jerry ice cream, you also know, is almost the highest part of the market. And in order to be able to supply to this Ben & Jerry ice cream, they had to have a very strict quality and sustainability program. So together, the cooperative, together with Unilever, is the owner of Ben & Jerry ice cream, has developed the so-called Caring Dairy program. And it's a program that puts all kinds of restrictions on the farmers. So farmers originally were not that happy to, you know, restrictions in terms of manure use, and restrictions in terms of how to milk the cows, in terms of the cows should be out in the meadow, how you treat your cows and things like that. Very high sustainability requirements, but because it's a small cooperative, relatively small cooperative, and the members, together with the cooperative business, have been always collaborating very strongly in developing and implementing this Caring Dairy sustainability program, and therefore they have been able to provide milk to the highest market share. Okay. Let's go a little bit quicker. So, well, this is a slide which you're probably familiar with. This just shows that there are many consumers on one side and there are many farmers, but somewhere in between there are only a few supermarkets or a few buying desks. So there is always a need for cooperatives for farmers to set up cooperatives for strengthen their bargaining power. Another challenge is the milk price volatility. After, in this case, after, what is it, 2007, where the European legislation or regulation on milk changed, intervention prices were lowered, the market was liberalized, and then the volatility increased, and it's something that will probably not go away anymore. So it's there's one thing I like to emphasize, and this is a little bit more from an organizational perspective, is that I started out saying that cooperatives nowadays, certainly the big ones, are hybrid type of organization. And why do we call that hybrid? Because we call it hybrid because it combines elements from cooperatives but also from non-cooperative businesses. For instance, if you have the traditional cooperatives, then usually only members provide products. Hybrid cooperative, there may be many more activities going on. So that is already a management and decision-making challenge. Only members can deliver products, members can deliver all the products. Nowadays, for instance, in Friesland Campina, the large dairy cooperative in the Netherlands, there is now a debate on limiting the supply of milk, at least not limiting as such, but at least discouraging farmers to produce more milk. So we'll probably have a situation where farmers get the best price, a good price for a certain quantity, and anything more they want to produce, they will probably get a lower price for. So the organization is pursuing more profit. Friesland Campina has a lot of activities in other countries, and it's really making some profit there, but how does this profit-earning activities relate to the farmers? So in all of the three elements, ownership, transaction, and control, there's going to be more diversity. So, and that diversity, and I skip a few slides, that diversity is actually something that is challenging for a cooperative. Now, there are some theories in organization theory that say, well, you have, in order to deal with that diversity, you have to reduce your diversity, make everything uniform, go for one product, one market, one company, one plant, processing plant. And there are some cooperatives that really focus on these scale economies, uniformity. However, that is not what is the trend in the market. The trend in the market is diversity, differentiation, diverse consumer preferences. But also among farmers, there's a trend, more entrepreneurship. Farmers realize that there are new market opportunities. They want to pursue these opportunities, and they want their cooperative, to facilitate them in their entrepreneurship. So how to deal with these different demands and different diversities? And as this theory says that you can use that complexity or hybridity in managing your perspective with your staff and your members, managing the interaction and communication, managing the standards, so make very clear what are the standards for the different products and the different streams, managing your commitment. So yes, one strategy would be to suppress complexity, diversity, in differentiation, but another strategy could be to use that differentiation and actually to leverage it. So wrapping up, well, just wrapping up, I have a few more things to say, but I think wrapping up, I think, and that's what we see at least in the dairy sector, and I'm working on a study of the future of dairy cooperatives in Europe together with Markus Hanisch from the Humboldt University of Berlin. What we see is that this whole world of the dairy is becoming much more diverse and differentiated, and it's a challenge for the cooperative to work with that, but there's no choice. So I'm positive that cooperatives are able to work with these challenges, but they are going to may have to go to some reorganizational structure. Anyway, there is enough future for the cooperative to help producers in a sustainably and efficiently way meet consumer demand for a sufficient and healthy food. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jos Bijman. As you heard, we have in Estonia today, in agricultural sector, at least 148 cooperatives. And we feel that it's too many. We need to merge them. What you can recommend, how to start this merging process? What we should do?
Okay. So now I'm the advisor of the... well, I think merging is very good. But in the past, mergers always were with this idea of just economies of scale, just putting everything together so you can produce and you can process more efficiently. I think nowadays you have to be careful. These cooperatives may have specific resources or specific assets that you don't just throw away. As I said, there is more diversity, differentiations in the market. So I would suggest to merge, but to still try to maintain some of the identities of the local, of the entities that are actually merging. Both from a consumer perspective, they may like particular products from a particular region, but also from the farmer perspective. We've seen in Germany, the big dairy cooperative DMK, it's also a merger, and now there is a lot of unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction among the members because they have the feeling that they're not being recognized anymore. So be careful just putting it all on one pile. Recognize and even leverage, as the theory says, these different backgrounds.
Ja meil on võimalus praegu võtta veel ainult üks küsimus auditooriumist, ülejäänud küsimused saame esitada paneeli ajal, mis tuleb pärast lõunat hiljem. Kellel on küsimus? Üks küsimus, palun käsi ja me toome mikrofoni. Ma ei näe kätt. Täname doktor Jos Bijmani ja meie väliskülalistele on meil teistsugune kingitus. Siin sees on Eesti kõige tuntum bränd, Kalev, ja kui need kommid on otsa söödud, siis jääb see karp veel pikaks ajaks seda reisi ja esinemist siia meenutama ja ka üks tore, väga kaunis raamat Eestimaast. Suur tänu, doktor Jos Bijman, aitäh! Me jätkame oma rahvusvahelise plokiga. Järgmine ettekanne on teemal Organisatsiooniõpe põllumajandusühistutes Kanada kogemusel. Ja uskuge või mitte, meil on siin konverentsil esineja teist poolt ookeani Kanadast, professor Erik Michaels. Palun.
Thank you, and thank you, Rando and Lise, for the invitation and for all the work in getting this conference organized. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to share with you some of the experiences that we have in Canada with cooperatives and producer organizations. We've heard a bit about these new forms of organizations among farmers already this morning, and I'll share with you, I think, one of the great successes in Canadian agriculture of how producer organizations have been really integral in the development of a particular industry in Saskatchewan. And I'll share with you some of those stories. So first, I'd like to say I'm a bit worried about this presentation because I'm the only thing standing between us and lunch. So I don't want to go too long on this, so I'll keep it short, and I'll share those main stories. But just to start, I think I'll give a background on Canadian agriculture, just a brief overview of what's happening in Canada in terms of some of the numbers and just some issues with scale. And then I'll probably skip, in the essence of time, I'll skip some of the key points on knowledge and knowledge transfer, and I'll focus on those stories that we see within the cooperative organizations and producer organizations.
You have 45 minutes.
Don't hurry? All right. Okay. So just a bit of scale. Canada is a very big place, and that is not all of Canada. That's just a small portion. So we have Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, And they would all fit very nicely within my province of Saskatchewan. And we like to say about Saskatchewan that it's hard to say, but it is easy to draw. It is a very nice rectangular shape. Kids all through elementary school are very, very adept at drawing Saskatchewan from an early age. In terms of size, we see in square kilometers, Saskatchewan is 10 times the size of Estonia, and all of the farmland in Canada, 626,000 square kilometers. So Canada, just a very big place in terms of scale. So some of that, you know, when I'm saying the numbers that I'll say later on, there's some definite scale effects in there. As we see in a lot of places around the world, farms in Canada are continuing to experience this trend of fewer and larger farms. So starting probably, you know, as I showed on the earlier slide, Canada is quite large, but while we may be large, we are quite young, young from a European standpoint. So our data goes back to 1871 from the Ag Census. And in that time we had the average farm was about 100 acres or 40 hectares was the average farm size. And now, in 2016, we're seeing only 200,000 farms in Canada and average size of about 800 acres or 300 hectares. And that's driven by technology, that's driven by this changes in structure and changes in the industry. Just in terms of other technologies, here we see a map. So this is the fuller map of Canada, and this is the adoption of no-till farming. So zero tillage or no tillage has been a pretty recent discovery, or not discovery, a recent technology and adaptation to farming in the prairies, where perhaps in the past, farmers would have practiced summer fallow. So they would not plant anything in the ground. They would leave that bare. They would do that in order to preserve moisture, to preserve nutrients, and then plant a crop in the next year. So there was you'd have a 4 or 5 year rotation where you'd have a cereal, an oil seed, perhaps a pulse, and then you would leave that land fallow to rest. But with the adoption of no-till, to preserve water and to preserve the soil, so you didn't lose it all the way, it didn't blow away, we see a real reduction in the number of summer fallow acres. Summer fallow has all but disappeared in the prairies now, and we see almost, you know, anywhere from 60 to 90% adoption of zero tillage. And a lot of that research, a lot of the economic research about the benefits of zero till has been funded by producer organizations. So farmers who have paid in levies from the production of their crop have reinvested that money into research on practices that can benefit them in their bottom line. Adoption of other technologies, so not just dealing with the soil, but I've got a couple charts here. Again, adoption of computers. So think about computers in agriculture as a pretty old technology. We see quite high adoption of computers. Farmers using electronic records to manage and determine what is the best strategic decision for them or a tactical decision to improve their own performance in the next growing year, to see which varieties performed better, keeping track of records to track their performance over time and their performance relative to other peers. We see that quite high adoption of that technology. A more recent technology would be the use of GIS mapping, to actually, instead of farming an acre or a hectare, trying to farm that square meter. So the use of GIS to determine soil profiles and nutrient capacity within the field. So you're not painting with a broad brush, but you're almost paint by number. We're seeing less adoption of that, but that is growing. And when we see this move to digital agriculture and technological advancements, we're probably going to see that development increase in the future. And what gets me, I guess, why I'm excited about agriculture and agricultural innovation is I see this as really the key to for farmers to improve their own performance. And this figures from some colleagues of mine at the University of Illinois, where I did my graduate work. And there they were looking at, what are some of the factors that influence performance among farms, right? So if we were going to look at which farms consistently are the top performers in terms of management returns versus farms that are in the middle and farms that are on the bottom of that spectrum, what are some of the things that influence how that farm performs? And what they found is that really one of the things that separates the farms that in the blue bar, the farms that are consistently in that top management returns category, they're really able to control their costs more effectively than other producers. And they do that through the ability to acquire and assimilate and apply new knowledge and new techniques to their farm business. So that search for trying to be a better farmer, trying to increase yield per hectare, trying to increase the price they receive for their product, also trying to decrease their costs. That search, that aspiration, is going to drive that search. So we see this, and when we think about cooperatives and cooperative organizations, how they can help this. These are these organizations that can really fund, like Jos was saying, that through scale, they can leverage a lot of dollars to put towards a problem that an individual farmer just can't individually do their own research and develop these strategies to meet those needs. And why this is important is, we're seeing agriculture, at least in North America and obviously elsewhere as well, is moving from this area this era of production to this era of knowledge. We've heard a lot of times that we're in a knowledge economy. We used to be in a production economy, then we were in a service economy, and now we're seeing agriculture move into a knowledge economy. And we've seen people discuss the effect of knowledge and the ability to leverage that. In the past, this is a quote from 1991 where Hamill said, competitiveness is a function of the firm's pace, efficiency, and extent of knowledge accumulation. So what he's saying here is that firms that are going to do well are the ones that are better able to acquire and utilize information that's developed and available in the market. So for firms that are competing in this space, they're no longer necessarily competing on size or competing on other aspects. They're competing on their ability to learn faster than their competitors, right? So how do cooperatives and producer organizations help in that manner I'll show in a couple slides, by creating this knowledge and disseminating it to their members. What we see in North America, and maybe we see it here. This is my first time in Estonia, so I'm not too up on how well connected producers are in social media. But in North America, it seems that every farmer has a Twitter account, and they are really involved in a discussion about issues that are important to those producers. So that connectivity within the industry is really important for that dissemination and acquisition of new ideas. Just last year, they had a meetup in Saskatchewan. So a lot of these main farmers who are vocal and active on Twitter had a meetup in Saskatchewan. So all of these farmers from around North America met up as a means to, it seemed like from following that discussion on Twitter, what they did was drink beer in a field, much like what we would do when we were younger. But at the same time, they're sharing ideas. They're sharing ideas of what works for them, what are the issues they're facing, and what are the common challenges and common solutions that they might find on their own farm business. But other than Twitter meetups, we also see a lot of farm shows and different ways that farmers source and acquire new ideas. So through competitors, through other farmers, through consultants in industry, or through institutions. So from the universities and from the cooperatives that work in partnership with the universities through funding and so on. That is a way for producers to, one, direct the area of research to issues that are really important for their farm business, but also to have early access to those gains from that research and help them improve their productivity and their efficiency in farming that land. So in terms of knowledge, I was asked to talk about organizational learning, and one of the key things that I think is important within this concept of organizational learning is this development and creation and dissemination of knowledge. And what we can, I tend to think of knowledge just like research, that it fits in two broad camps. So we can have basic knowledge, which is really this filling in the gaps. It's, providing those base tools that researchers and firms can use to solve more applied problems. So we think of basic research that feeds into applied research. And just like basic knowledge can feed into applied knowledge. And in terms of basic knowledge, I'm thinking about the research that maybe you've seen this, it was in the news a couple months ago. It was really prominently displayed in Saskatchewan because one of the leading researchers in this project was from the University of Saskatchewan, but they recently mapped the wheat genome. I don't know if you saw that, and one of the key researchers was at the University of Saskatchewan, and this is what I mean by this basic knowledge, this basic research. So through this discovery of mapping the genome, now new plant breeders or plant breeders and plant scientists can take that knowledge and really target different aspects of the plant breeding aspects or disease treatment and so on within that crop to improve performance, improve yield, make farming that a little less of a headache than it maybe already is. So here we have the gentleman in this picture is Bert Van Amberg. He's one of the leading lentil breeders in the world. So I had a lovely dinner last night with Rando where we had some black lentils as part of the meal, or I did, and it was good to see. I don't think in Saskatchewan we grow black lentils, but we typically have red lentils and green lentils. But the growth of the lentil in pulses in general has been tremendous. So within this knowledge creation in agriculture, what we have found within Saskatchewan, anyway, is that through these producer organizations, which are funded by farmers, organized by farmers, farmers sit on the board and direct the research. They've developed a real gains in that industry. They've developed focused research dollars and research activities on both basic and applied research in terms of, pre-breeding and genetic gene sequencing, but also in variety development. So how can we leverage those farmer dollars, those levy dollars, to provide those growers with better yielding varieties, right? So we think of farmers as sometimes, we're taught that firms are profit maximizers. Sometimes following that news on Twitter, I think really farmers are yield maximizers. They want a higher yielding crop. They want, if they're competing with others, that's one area where they can have an advantage. And also within this knowledge creation, it's developing new tools and best practices for how to actually grow and harvest and store and manage that crop. So we've seen through the producer organization, they've been able to marshal a large amount of research dollars into these activities, and we want to see how what that has meant for the farmers. We see that here in this chart. So in 1981, the lentil industry in Saskatchewan in Canada it barely existed. It was barely a blip on the chart. So that the axis on the vertical axis would show how many million acres of lentils this is lentils, total exports from seeded area of lentils in Canada. And I'll just tell you, about 95–96% of all lentil acres in Canada occur in Saskatchewan. So when you talk about the Canadian lentil industry, you're really talking about the Saskatchewan lentil industry. In 1981, this market it barely existed. This was just an idea of maybe this is a new crop that farmers can add to their portfolio of choice that they could grow in their rotation to improve their own profitability. And as we see with the development of these producer groups and the funding of breeding programs, and which led to new varieties to be developed and released, we see acreage continuing to increase. And just last year, over 5 million acres, or 2 million hectares of lentils were seeded in Saskatchewan. So you have this tremendous growth in seeded acres, funded by farmers. Research was directed by farmers. They sit on these research boards, so it's not university plant breeders or economists determining where is that research going. It's the farmers that sit on that board and say, no, this is what is important to me. This is where we should direct these research dollars. So we've seen this growth in acres. At the same time, us that study the economics know that we can't just increase supply. If we just focus on supply, what we're going to do is it's going to lead us to a lower long-run real price for that product. So we also have to invest in developing those markets. So at the same time, if you see the line there, exports for this crop they've continued to work to find new markets, to find new opportunities for growers to sell their product around the world. And we see this increase in acres, and you say, well, what happened? Why do we see such a large increase in acres? And really, it's that farmer is making a decision every year of what crop to grow, what variety to grow, and a lot of times that decision is made on their expectation of what the returns for that crop are going to be, right? So, and what affects those returns are yield and price, and also cost. But we see what has happened to expected yield of lentils in Saskatchewan since 2000, and the gray bar would be in kilograms per hectare. Where in Canada we still think in pounds per acre, but that yield has gone from just over 1,000 pounds per acre to almost 1,800 pounds per acre in 20 years. So in terms of what has been the result of the dollars invested in plant breeding and improvements in agronomic practices has been a tremendous increase in yield for farmers to take advantage of these new seeds for them to grow. So with that, it was that was hopefully a little bit of a background on knowledge creation and knowledge transfer and knowledge in agriculture. And now what I want to do is switch over to what we have seen in terms of knowledge transfer within cooperative organizations in Canada. So I guess, like Jos said, it always is helpful to think about definitions of terms when we're talking about this, so everybody has a clear understanding of what I mean when I'm talking about knowledge transfer, and how I define it, or the definition I use is, it's this transmission of pertinent information from one area of the organization to another, right? So just pretty clear definition. And this can be from managers to employees. It can be from managers to farmers, farmers to management. It can be both top-down and bottom-up. And I think that is the key within knowledge transfer, is it really should be bidirectional. It's not, knowledge transfer cannot just be a one-way street. As we've seen through the funding mechanisms and the governance model within those producer organizations, is the research is directed by farmers. So farmers are telling the researchers, these are the issues that are important to us in terms of how to manage disease, how to manage saline soils, how to manage different factors within that production process. That is farmer directed, that is farmer determined. So that is a key point within this knowledge transfer. It's when knowledge is created, we would like that to flow to other members of the organization, but we would also like knowledge and information to flow up to the researchers and the managers on what are the important issues that farmer members are facing. As Jos also said, why do we seek cooperatives? And one of the points that I'll say that is different from what Jos said is, I think within a cooperative, it enables the firm to internalize a partner's skills, right? So just like with scale, having that large dairy cooperative or having a producer group that's funding a breeding program, that farmer would not be able to do that on their own, right? So with the cooperative and with them hiring highly skilled people to work in new product development or partnering with the university to develop new varieties, that farmer is able to internalize or leverage the skills of that partner. So that's another key benefit that we see in cooperatives. And here, what I think is interesting, this is a bit of a history of Saskatchewan agriculture. This was a picture of Fieldman, and this was Fieldman of the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool. And the Wheat Pool was a cooperative that was formed in the 1923 in Saskatchewan. It has its roots in the first iteration of the Canadian Wheat Board that started in 1917. That was started as a result of decreased wheat production around the world as a result of World War I. So they had the Canadian Wheat Board start, and they were a single desk, single buyer, single seller of wheat in Canada from 1917 to 1920. And then they said, well, the issue that led to the wheat board is now gone. Let's disband that. And there were a lot of farmers that were upset about this. They said, hey, we really had a lot of benefit. This was the highest prices we've ever had for our wheat in the 1917, 1920 period when that wheat board was there, and now they disbanded it. So there was this progressive wave that swept through North America, and great orators of the day were going from town to town via rail or truck and evangelizing, if you will, on the benefits of cooperation. And so there was this big push to develop the new cooperative, and it was named the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool. Or again, I say it started in 1923, and they employed these fieldmen. And the role of the fieldman was to go from town to town and to, again, spread the good word of cooperatives, and why should farmers be interested in a cooperative? What are the benefits that a cooperative can have for them? So one of the key things that they did, is this is a way to, encourage knowledge transfer by encouraging cultural transfer, right? So by transferring that culture of cooperation and the benefits that could come from that, you see more transfer of knowledge, right? And if we see, so this was their part of their suggested time, how a fieldman should spend their day, and they had this. There's more on there, but they had it all the way down to, if we total it all up, if we had the other image, it would be 365 days. So this is what these fieldmen should do for every day of the year. So, 9 days of co-op schools. So actually having a school to educate and inform local farmers on what are the benefits of co-ops. Committee meetings, two full months, 2 full months of committee meetings where, again, this is that bi-directional knowledge transfer, understanding what are the needs of the local members and moving that back up the chain to management. But as I say, this is, as you can tell from the photo, this is historical. This was almost 100 years ago that this type of activity was going on in Saskatchewan. But as we see with AgroPure, and as Jos said, AgroPure was on his list of top dairy cooperatives in the world. It was number 19, I believe. So 19th largest dairy cooperative in the world, and they within their organization, within their organizational structure, they have a model that is very similar to the fieldman model of the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool. So they have what they call a solidarity committee, and the role and the goal of that solidarity committee is to do the same thing that the field staff did with the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool, is to promote the benefits of cooperation among the producers, to encourage and solidify the connectedness that those farmers feel with their cooperative, and also to gather information. What are the needs of the members? How do we, when you have a large cooperative like AgroPure or any other large dairy, one thing that we tend to see is farmers feel that they are not connected anymore because that cooperative is so large. So they see that cooperative not as their local co-op, or they see it as any other business, and they might not be as connected to it as they were in the early stages of the development of that co-op. So within this, AgroPure is able to, hopefully, their goal is to increase that connection and increase the information flow between farmers and management. Again, why this is important is this is a way to leverage search in terms of how do farmers identify new ideas. So a lot of times most farm innovations are incremental or off the shelf. Through working with a large cooperative like AgroPure, they were able to allocate some of their research dollars to developing new products, developing new markets, things like that an individual farmer be able to do. One of the other interesting programs that AgroPure has is what they call a InnoFabric, and that is an in-house idea transfer scheme. So this is knowledge transfer within the cooperative, where they've set up processes that the R&D teams, the food scientists can work with marketing, can work with processing, can work with the farmers to what are some ideas that we could come up with. So it's really, it's kind of a, if you will, a brainstorming activity that they can share new ideas or new practices across the co-op to hopefully spur some ideas on what is the next thing that might be happening in dairy processing. Nature of time, I'll skip that one. So the other main organizational type that we see operating in Saskatchewan, so we've talked a little bit about cooperatives with the old wheat pool and AgroPure, but we see a lot of work in those areas in Saskatchewan anyway are being done and funded by producer organizations. As we've seen in an earlier presentation, Estonia has yet to form any of these producer organizations, and I think one of the key things that you might take from my presentation is there are tremendous benefits to that, and these organizations can be complementary to cooperatives in terms of how we can think about the knowledge that is created through them and the knowledge that is created through a cooperative. So while these producer organizations aren't cooperatives in how they are organized, if we think about the 7 cooperative principles, a lot of these producer organizations do seem to look and act like cooperatives. So we think about a cooperative as having voluntary membership, and this is where it can get fuzzy within the Saskatchewan pulse growers, because they're funded through a levy. So for every ton of product that farmers sell in Saskatchewan, 1% of the value of that sale would go to the Saskatchewan pulse growers. And one of the interesting things about the Sask pulse growers is that levy is non-refundable, where most of the other levies in Saskatchewan are refundable. So for the Sask wheat growers, the Sask flax, those farmers at the end of the year can sign a form and say, no, please send me my levy back. I don't want to participate in that organization. So I'd say for most of it, membership is voluntary or quasi-voluntary. There's farmer control of all of these organizations. The farmers elect a board of directors. That board determines and establishes a research agenda of how they are going to allocate those levy dollars. What are we doing with those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? So with farmers being the deciders of that, a lot of times that research is important to farmers. They're going to invest in where you see a big return on their investment. Again, economic participation, education, training, and information. So a lot of these producer groups will hold webinars. They'll produce fact sheets. They'll produce videos that farmers can use to better understand how to identify different diseases in their crop, what are best practices in terms of treating the crop for weeds and pests, and to ensure the market access in the future. So here's the budget. So this is budgeted outflows in 2017 for Sask Pulse, and we see, this is upwards of, I guess, about 18 million Canadian dollars. Almost 13 million goes to research and development, and this is you know, that money that's being reinvested into developing those next varieties. It's into how to store this product better, how to better agronomic practices, and so on. So that money that is collected by farmers is going right back into tools and knowledge that can help them in the future. So it's looking at investing into research and development. And again, we're seeing, again, the cooperative principles in place here. So almost $1.8 million goes to Pulse Canada. And Pulse Canada is an umbrella organization where you'd have Alberta Pulse Growers, Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, Manitoba Pulse, all of those provincial organizations are working together for the betterment of the whole Canadian pulse industry. 1.3 million in communications. Again, that's that education and training we see as an important principle in cooperatives. So again, the SAS Pulse Growers, while not a cooperative in organizational form, they sure act like a cooperative in how they organize and how they're governed in terms of farmers deciding what is being done and how they invest their dollars. So this is just some examples of education and training. So we got a YouTube video again. So I think this is a really cool, really interesting model of knowledge transfer, because this is redeployable information. It's not like while workshops like this are extremely valuable, if you're not here, how do you capture this information, right? So with the workshops and the webinars and others that the producer organizations have been investing in, they've tried to make this multimodal and multi-point informational access for farmers. So the video is how to determine which herbicide to spray for a desiccant or other things that, you know, we see a lot of potential trade disruptions in Canada anyway, with maximum residue limits. There's been a real disruption for our durum producers trying to sell their product into Italy. That market has almost been shut down in the past year over this issue of herbicide use as a desiccant in durum. This red box is from the SAS Pulse Growers, so market considerations for the use of crop protection products. So this is important because for a lot of these crops, these are over $1 billion Canadian export markets for a lot of these crops. So the lentil market in Saskatchewan, again, over $1 billion Canadian in exports. So this is, again, really important for farmers to have this information, have timely information, have relevant information that, you know, with smartphones being as common as they are, at the palm of their hand. If they have an issue of, I'm going to spray this herbicide, what are the implications of it? Can I spray it? Should I spray it? They have that information in the palm of their hand. Again, this issue of redeployable knowledge. So webinars that are created are often created in a streamed format, so farmers can watch them again. They can, if there is complex information, what we see with transferring complex information, you want to do that in multiple times and in multiple formats, so that farmer, that person that's trying to receive that information can look at that again and continue to internalize that information to retain that into the future. So all of this kind of brings me to this idea of I don't know if you have this concept in Estonia, but in North America we have this test. It's called a duck test. Do you have the duck test in Estonia, where if it looks like a duck and it swims like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck? we can think about this in a cooperative sense where these producer organizations, even though they're not cooperatives, if they look like a cooperative and they act like a cooperative and they're governed like a cooperative, does it matter that they're not a cooperative, right? They are organized by farmers, for farmers. They embody a lot of the cooperative principles that we know and we teach. So we can see these producer organizations not as a substitute for cooperatives in some of that generation and transfer of knowledge, but as a complement. These producer organizations often focus on more of that basic knowledge creation, and cooperatives can focus on more of that applied knowledge creation of what are the specific topics that are of interest to members of that particular cooperative, where the organization, if there's a producer organization of dairy, they can focus on the broader picture bits of knowledge that are important to all producers, all dairymen in Estonia. And the cooperatives, if there are still several cooperatives, if they don't listen to Jos and merge into one, they can focus on one or the particular aspects that are important for them. So just to wrap up, I hope I was able to share with you some of the ideas behind knowledge transfer within different cooperatives and producer organizations. A lot of times within these producer organizations, those investments are still aligned with farmer needs, right? So these are farmer-directed research dollars. That research money and that knowledge that's created is going to go to issues that are of direct importance to their farmer members. And for effective knowledge transfer, we want that information flow to be bidirectional and over multiple points of information, so that knowledge is redeployable and able to be used again. So with that, I'd say thank you for your attention, thank you for inviting me, and I welcome any questions that we may have.
Thank you very much, Professor Erik Michaels. You have a lot of experiences and you know how to transform knowledges as professor, I guess. What you think, if you look your experiences so far, what is a best way or best method for transformation knowledges between people?
So the question was on how do we transform knowledge, best practice? I'll just go up here. Sorry about that. So how do we transform knowledge to farmers? I think what we see in the education space is, each person has a different learning style, right? We think of people who learn by doing, people who learn by being told, by reading. And I think within cooperative organizations, we have to, think about that, of how we disseminate that knowledge to farmers across multiple learning styles, right? So a lot of farming is experiential learning. We learn by doing a lot of times in agriculture. So are there demonstrations or are there ways that we can show that through videos or other things? But also through reading and listening as well. So I think effective knowledge transfer should probably give those farmers with different learning styles the ability to choose the one that works best for them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. And we meet in panel.